My long-anticipated and obsessively planned for Antarctic Expedition began and almost ended on December 28, 2018. I arrived early at Logan Airport for my first flight, but it was repeatedly delayed and then canceled. There was no way to get to Miami in time for my booked flights to South America. I was at great risk for arriving in Ushuaia, Argentina after my expedition ship would have sailed. Then, after an overnight stay at Logan, I was most fortunate to obtain the very last available seats for a new set of flights from Boston to Panama City to Buenos Aires and then on to Ushuaia. I finally arrived in Ushuaia with only an hour to spare before the ship sailed. The Resolute was to be our base of operations for the next 20 days. That's me at the back of the bus, exhausted after 30 hours without sleep. The expedition began with champagne on the afterdeck as we sailed down the Drake Channel toward Tierra del Fuego and the South Atlantic Ocean. The overall expedition route is Ushuaia to the Falklands, to South Georgia, to Elephant Island, to the Antarctic continent, and then back to Ushuaia. 20 days in all. Instead of sailing on the upscale 140-passenger Resolute, I had originally been booked on a less costly, more Spartan 90-passenger research vessel. Luckily for me, it ran aground in the Arctic during the summer, and fortunately, the One Ocean Polar Expedition cruise line upgraded me to the Resolute. It was a wonderful turn of events. It is a 3-day voyage from Ushuaia to the Falkland Islands. During this transit, we explored the ship and got out our cameras to practice capturing the many seabirds following the ship. There was a force 7 gale blowing as we arrived off the coast of West Falkland Island. Zodiacs could not be operated in this wind, so the captain repositioned the ship into the broad channel between the West and East Islands. However, the winds were still gusting over 50 knots, so he settled on a ship's cruise along the coasts of both of the islands. We passed the location of the first British settlement, a 1765 military outpost. The possession of the islands has been disputed for centuries. In the late afternoon, we came upon a massing of black-browed albatross that had been attracted to an upwelling of krill. The next day at dawn, we sailed into Stanley Town Harbor. Stanley is the principal town in the Falklands. It has a population of 2,100 people. Most are native-born in the Falklands and are of British descent. The geology of the Falkland Islands is fascinating. Today, the islands are located on a projection of the Patagonian continental shelf. In ancient geological time, this shelf was part of the supercontinent known as Gondwana, but which about 400 million years ago broke from what is now Africa and drifted westward. The East Falkland Island is underlain by basalt rock layers that are often severely deformed. One can see steep or vertical dips that create a very irregular and sometimes steeply inclined landscape. The Falkland Islands have a maritime climate lying in the transition region between the tundra and subpolar zone. The climate is very much influenced by the cool South Atlantic Ocean and the northerly flowing Patagonian current. This oceanic climate type is characterized by both low seasonal and diurnal temperature ranges and no marked wet and dry seasons. The average monthly maximum temperature exceeds 50 degrees Fahrenheit for no more than 4 months of the year, and the average monthly minimum temperature does not drop below 27 degrees Fahrenheit. This maritime subarctic climate zone is also found in parts of coastal Iceland, the Faroe Islands, the northwestern coastal Norway, and the southern islands of Alaska. The Magellanic penguin is the second smallest and most northern of the penguins in the southern oceans of the Western Hemisphere. They grow to be 24 to 30 inches tall and weigh about 6 to 14 pounds. The Magellanic penguin's diet consists almost entirely of fish. They can dive to about 140 feet and remain underwater for about 90 seconds. It is estimated that there are 100,000 pairs in the Falklands. The flightless steamer duck gets its name from the old steam-powered ships that had paddle wheels. Because these ducks can't fly, they use their stubby wings to move quickly across the water. Interestingly, there are steamer ducks living inland on the Falklands that can fly very well. The distance from the Falklands to South Georgia Island is about 970 miles, and it takes 3 days sailing for us to arrive. Along with its satellite islands, South Georgia is located in the Southern Ocean and is swept by the Atlantic convergent currents. Giant tabular icebergs from the ice shelves of the far south rumble into the island's weather shores. Thus, South Georgia is truly an Antarctic island. Geologically, it has the very impressive Aldar's mountain range, whose peaks and valleys create impressively changeable microclimates. One must always be prepared for the sudden onsets of fierce winds and storms. Most important for nature lovers, there are sheltered valleys with meltwater streams and tussock grass moraines that provide opportunities for close-up encounters with wildlife. Arriving on the beach, we encountered king penguins and Antarctic fur seals. Just several weeks ago, one couldn't land on this beach because thousands of fur seals and gigantic southern elephant seals would be quarreling and mating. To get among them would be suicidal. The seals that remain are predominantly pups and weanlings whose mothers are out at sea feeding. These mothers will return for weeks to nurse their pups. Also present on the beach and inland are a few fur seal males with grizzled coats that are still trying to control the movements of the smaller seals. These males can weigh 400 pounds, while an adult female can weigh over 100 pounds. King penguins are the second largest species of penguin. They are about 35 inches in height and they weigh between 24 and 35 pounds. King penguins eat various species of small fish, squid, and krill. These fish constitute roughly 80% of their diet. The king penguin's predators include aquatic mammals and giant petrels. The latter take many chicks of all sizes and some eggs. The southern giant petrel's body measures from 34 to 39 inches. The king penguin's average age of first breeding is around 5 to 6 years, and they are serially monogamous, having only one mate each year. The king penguin has an extremely prolonged breeding cycle, taking around 14 to 16 months from laying to offspring fledging. Although pairs will attempt to breed annually, they are generally only successful 1 year in 2 or 2 years in 3 in a triennial pattern in South Georgia. The reproductive cycle begins in September to November as the birds return to colonies for a prenuptial molt. Fur seal's diet is about 95% krill, and each seal can eat about a ton of krill a year. The deepest known dive for Antarctic fur seal sits at 590 feet, and the longest dive lasting about 10 minutes. The average foraging dive lasts about 4 minutes and goes to a depth of about 40 feet. Antarctic fur seals are generally solitary outside the mating season, although they can congregate in vast numbers on beaches near good feeding grounds. There is a colony of Gentoo penguins off the beach and higher up on the ridge. Gentoo penguins are stocky and not as large as the kings. Gentoos stand about 19 to 35 inches high and weigh about 10 to 18 pounds. They feed on krill, squid, and fish. Shackleton's extraordinary leadership skills contributed to 27 men successfully braving the nearly 2 years they were stranded. Ernest Shackleton died of a heart attack at age 47 as he was planning another South Pole expedition. The Shag Rocks are 6 very small islands 150 miles west of the main island of South Georgia and 620 miles from the Falkland Islands. Thousands of imperial shags nest there. Elephant Island is an ice-covered mountainous island off the coast of Antarctica in the outer reaches of the South Shetland Islands. On the expedition, Shackleton's ship, the Endurance, got trapped in the ice for 10 months until the pressure of the ice crushed the ship's hull. With meager food, clothing, and shelter, Shackleton and his men were stranded on the ice floes, where they camped for another 5 months. Knowing that they must leave the ice pack, the crew pulled 3 lifeboats to the edge of the ice shelf. After 5 harrowing days at sea, the exhausted men landed their 3 lifeboats at Elephant Island, 346 miles from where the Endurance sank.
There's the Nomen. That actually gave them some protection from the sea, but it also blocked a bit of their view of if there was going to be anyone coming past. It was called Elephant Island because of the elephant seals that they'd harvested here, but they actually called them sea elephants then. By then all the elephant seals had been killed, so they expected there wasn't going to be anyone come back through, which was true, they didn't. They had landed further up the coast. That was their first time on land. Frank Hurley wrote how some of them went quite mad and rolled around and poured gravel over themselves just because touching land. That night they put up their tents, shivering, freezing, weak. The storm came through and shredded their tents. The next morning they sent Wild and Worsley up the coast to try and find somewhere better, and this was the better. It was a little bit bigger than it is now, or quite a bit bigger. The photo I showed yesterday was taken from kind of up above that snowbank you can see at the end there, where Frank Hurley went up to take his photo.
During their month-long stranding on Elephant Island, Shackleton's crew mostly ate penguins. Chin-strap penguins are easily recognized by their white face and the fine black line across the cheeks. Chin straps stand about 28 inches tall and weigh about 9 to 14 pounds. They are fast swimmers and reach 20 miles per hour underwater. With no ships passing the stormy Elephant Island, Shackleton decided to leave the majority of his crew there and chose 5 men to attempt to sail to South Georgia in a lifeboat. They sailed and rowed 800 miles, barely reaching South Georgia's west coast. Then they had to cross the mountain range to reach the Grytviken whaling station. Brown Bluff is a basalt tuya located on the northern end of the Antarctic Peninsula. A tuya is a flat-topped, steep-sided volcano formed when lava erupts through a glacier or sheet ice. The lava cools very quickly and thus can't travel far, resulting in a steep-sided hill. Brown Bluff has a long, cobbled beach rising steeply towards heavily eroded cliffs. It supports breeding colonies of about 20,000 pairs of Adelie penguins and about 550 pairs of Gentoos. The Adelie penguin is the smallest species of penguin in the Antarctic. They stand about 2.3 feet tall and can weigh up to 10 pounds. They are distinguished by the white eye rings surrounding their eyes. Male Adelies are nest builders, aiming to attract a female by building the biggest and best nest. They collect small rocks from the surrounding areas and carry them or roll them back to the nest with their beaks. Adelies will also frequently steal rocks from their neighbors' nests. They spend the winter offshore in the seas surrounding the Antarctic ice pack. They typically feed on krill, but also eat fish and squid. Paulet Island consists of lava flows capped by a cinder cone. Geothermal heat keeps part of the island ice-free. About 100,000 breeding pairs of Adelie penguins nest there. In 1903, during the Swedish Antarctic Expedition, its ship, the Antarctic, was crushed by ice off the coast of Paulet Island. The survivors built a stone hut on shore, and the Adelies congregate around it now. On land, adeles waddle around at about 1.5 miles per hour. In the water, adeles are pretty fast swimming, reaching around 2.5 to 5 miles per hour. However, when necessary, they can reach speeds of up to 9 miles per hour when hunting or fleeing from predators. Orcas and leopard seals prey upon adult and juvenile adelie penguins at sea. Leopard seals also attack and kill adeles underneath the thin ice. Chicks may be taken by skuas and giant petrels. Adeles are feisty birds. They've been known to take on potential predators, seals or large seabirds, or even ward off humans by slapping them with their flippers.